All right, 1.1 segment addition, levels 3 and 4. So this is 1.1. So you just need a piece of paper to write this down. There isn't a pre-printed sheet for this. So our first example is 8x minus 17 on a segment that looks like this, and 5x minus 3, where this is E, F, and G. If EG is 71, find x. So this plus this equals the whole thing. We're just going to add them together. It's just using algebra. So 8x minus 17 plus, and I put it in parentheses the first time in case there's any negatives I need to deal with, has to equal 71, because this is EG. So there are no negatives here that I need to deal with. And so then I can just combine like terms. So my 8 and my 5x become 13x, minus 7 and minus 3 becomes negative 20. Add 20 to both sides. 13x equals 91. We divide by 13, and I get that x equals 7. That's all there is to it. It's just about figuring out which pieces of the expression go where into an equation. Are they equal to each other? Are we subtracting them? Are we adding them? Just like you've done for the first two levels, except now we throw some algebra in there. Let's look at another example. This time, we have a line segment. TUV, where TU is 9x plus 2, UV is 5, and I'm going to tell you that if TV is 14x minus 8, find TU. So this one's different in that this time, one of my parts has a whole number, and I'm also asking you not to find x, but to solve for a segment. So 9x plus 2 plus 5 equals TB, the whole thing is 14x minus 8. First, combine like terms. We just spent some time doing that. Don't forget to do that step. So that I get 9x plus 7 equals 14x minus 8. Then we subtract 14x from both sides because I like my variables on the left. That's negative 5x plus 7 equals negative 8. And then we subtract 7 from both sides so that cancels out, and I get negative 5x equals negative 15, and we divide so that I get x is 3. But that's not what I ask you to find. I ask you to find TU. So to do that, we say, okay, well, I know that TU is 9x plus 2. Well, now I know that x is 3, so that's 9 times 3 plus 2. That's 27 plus 2. That's 29 units. So not only do you need to solve for x, but then you need to substitute that back in to find the piece that I've asked you to find. Let's look at a third example. So let K be a point on segment SY. That's important because I need to know that I have a segment that looks like this, that S and Y are the endpoints, and K is somewhere in there. It doesn't say middle, it doesn't say anything that lets us know that. I just know that it's there. So I have if SK is 13x minus 5 and KY is 2x plus 9, and I know that SY is 36 minus x, I want to find all the pieces. Find x, SK, KY, and SY. That's a lot. I'm not only finding x with only expressions, but I want to know what all the different pieces are. So let's start by setting up the whole equation. SK plus KY equals SY. That's what that really means. That's two little pieces together equal the long piece in its total. So then SK is 13x minus 5. KY is 2x plus 9. And SY is 36 minus x. So now I need to combine like terms. So there's my x's. So that's 15x. Then I'm going to do my constants. So that's negative 5 plus 9 is plus 4 equals 36, minus x. So I like my x's on the left, so I'm going to add x to both sides so that 16x minus 4, plus 4 equals 36. Then we subtract 4 from both sides so that I get 16x equals 32. Then we divide, and I get x is 2. So that's the first part. So x equals 2. SK equals 13x minus 5. So that's 13 times 2 minus 5. 26 minus 5 is 21. KY is 2x plus 9. That's 2 times 2 plus 9. 4 plus 9 is 13. And SY is 36 minus x, which is 36 minus 2, which is 34. Now, to verify that, because it's always a good idea to check, this plus this should equal that. So we said way back up here that this was the equation that we were doing. That means that if SK is 21 and KY is 13, that should equal 34. And it does, so that's how I know that I've done my work correctly. Are there several steps? Yes. Are they difficult steps? No. It's solving an equation, which we've practiced for the last week and you've done for 2 years, and then it's substitution, all of which you are capable of doing. Let's do another one. So vocabulary is super important in math because like line has a specific definition. Equation versus inequality versus absolute value, like those things mean different things. And so when I tell you the word midpoint, it's not just between two parts. Midpoint is a point that divides a segment, into two equal, and that's the important part, equal and congruent, if we're using all kinds of math language here, segments. So if I tell you something's the midpoint, it cuts it in half, where each of the two pieces are now exactly the same. That's important because as I tell you, this is a midpoint, I'm not going to tell you, and by the way, they're equal. You're supposed to know that based on the words that are in the question. So a diagram of that would look something like this. So line L intersects segment AC at midpoint B, which means that I can now say, using those two red lines, because they both have a single slash through them, that those two pieces are congruent or equal. Another thing that we need to talk about is the idea of bisector. So a line, ray, or segment, and I'll explain those in a minute, that intersects a segment at its midpoint is called actually rephrase that. Let's go back. Is said to bisect, by meaning to bisect the segment, and because it bisects it, then it's called a segment bisector. So, when we're being specific, and in math we try to be all the time, a line goes for infinite in both directions. It's shown as a line with arrows on both ends. A ray has a beginning point, so I can identify where it starts, but then it goes forever in one direction. And a segment is just a piece, so it has a defined beginning and end. So when we look at this drawing that we did, I can say from this picture that B is the midpoint of segment AC, and line L, that's like a cursive lowercase l, is a segment bisector. So it's all about the vocabulary and making sure that we can keep that straight. So midpoint, line, ray, segment, bisector, bisect, those all have definitions that we just need to keep in mind as they're part of a problem. So let's look at another example. This time I tell you that Q is the midpoint of PR. and I want you to find x. So then I draw this picture, and I tell you that it's P, Q, R, and that PQ is 7x minus 16, and QR is 4x plus 2. Now I want you to look at this, and then I want to go back to that first question that we did. How do I know to solve this problem differently than the one we're looking at now? And the answer is this word. The first example didn't have the word midpoint. It just had two segments. It could look like it's in the middle, but unless I tell you that it is, it doesn't count. So to do this, we say, all right, well, if it's the midpoint, then that means that this is congruent or equal to that. So then I can say, okay, 7x minus 16 has to equal 4x plus 2. Subtract 4x from both sides. 3x minus 16 equals 2. Add 16, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. Add 16 like this, do it the right way. 3x equals 18, x is 6. The only way that you know how to set up that equation is if you know what this word means up here. That's how I know that, okay? Let's do it again. This time, H is the midpoint. Of GI. And I want you to find GH. And I ran out of paper, ran out of room. So here's your diagram. I've got G, H, I. And I'm telling you that GH is 5x plus 2, and HI is 9x minus 10. Because it's the midpoint, I know that those two pieces are congruent. Now I know that they're congruent, I can set up my equation to say 5x plus 2 has to equal 9x minus 10. That's the definition of midpoint. That's why you can set the equation up like that. You need to get in the habit of writing that, because I am going to ask you to justify why you're doing that as you progress through this class. So now that I've done that, I can solve. Minus 9x minus 9x, negative 4x plus 2 equals negative 10. Subtract 2. Negative 4x is negative 12. X is 3. Now, I ask you to find GH. GH is 5x plus 2. So that's 5 times 3 plus 2. That's 17. So again, make sure that you answer the question that's being asked and not just one that you think. This last one takes all of those steps and puts them together. So it's not hard. These are just more complex problems. We're asking you to recall more steps about the process. So if I tell you that G is the midpoint of FH, and FH is, I'm running out of room again, 6y minus 2. And I want to know what y is. Doesn't sound too bad, right? Until I draw the picture. Here's what I'm going to give you with to work. FH is my line, G is my midpoint. And we're going to tell you that FG is 4x plus 3, and GH is 7x minus 12. So why is this a problem? I want y, and I just gave you 2 x's. So what do? Well, I did tell you that G is the midpoint, which means this piece and this piece are congruent. So because of that, I can write 4x plus 3 equals 7x minus 12. That's the definition of midpoint. Cut it in 2 equal pieces. So now I can solve that equation. Minus 7x minus 7x, negative 3x plus 3 equals negative 12. Minus 3 minus 3, negative 3x equals negative 15. Divide, x is 5. Okay, so now I know x is 5. What does that tell me? It doesn't tell me anything about y yet, but what it does tell me is that FG is 4x plus 3. That's 4 times 5 plus 3. That's 23. Okay? It also tells me that GH, which is 7x minus 12, that's 7 times 5 minus 12, 35 minus 12 is also 23. That checks out because they have to be equal. So if this is 23 and this is 23, then what's the whole thing? Therefore, FG plus GH has to equal FH. 23 plus 23 equals 46. So now I have a value for FH. But I also told you that FH equals 6y minus 2. And FH equals 46. Since they're the same thing, now I can set them equal. 6y minus 2 equals 46. Add 2. 6y equals 48. Y is 8. Now, is that a lot to do for one problem? Maybe. But was it really? All we did was do all the things together that we've done and then get that answer. So this is just taking segment addition and throwing algebra in, making sure that you remember how to solve algebra, and more importantly, that you can critically think, well, I want a y, but I was given x's. Do I have enough stuff to use the x's to find the y's? How do I plug this in? Am I adding, subtracting? Are they equal? Is it a midpoint? All of that stuff. Okay?